The game is rigged. Even if you have won the competition, well, these guys now have 60 years or whatever they have lost as an 18-year-old to get back at you. What I'm saying is if you become number one in a competition, well, they have the amount of time related to humanity to being number one again. So even if you win, they have 60 years, and modern medicine knows that you can do that. Legacy elites have used standardization as a weapon to ensure that if you outpace them, they have 60 years to reclaim their dominance. All the while, you're stuck in a maze trying to get out of this standardization trap, making you fear the innovation. Western forces and dominance forces a physical and mental submission to their version of progress, ensuring that any threat is bogged down in bureaucratic friction for 60 years, or at least until they get back. Not to mention, not a single energy in the world with this sort of direction on dominance has been muffled out, just postponed, to capture the results of excitement that the results of control really deliver on. 60 years to get back, you say? Say you're 18 and you lose an altercation. Well, the culture in the West is to say that you've got 60 years to get back. You've also got 60 years to get somebody, infrastructure, withholding, reserve currency status, some stock market, and global alliances to allow this. Small player to really avoid the shocks that's going to affect the greater economy. We know that small players often have a big impact on the greater economy, so that they shut down the greater economy for even the smallest little player. And this 60 years is a problem because human life is getting longer, and it's also giving more leeway for the standardization that is being broken to be get back or re-established by someone or the same person getting back. By setting those standards of getting back and defaming and containing, deterring any minority who is able to get back, the human being standards that women now give their prized possession, their ability to have families, rights to those who win and don't have the ability to get back. If you do win as a minority, then the West changes what is considered professional, standard, success in the future, ultimately colonizing the mind and behavior before the game continues now that you've won the altercation. This is the problem with 60 years of being able to get back. The stress that the rigged game has on players knowing that they have 60 years to get back after winning an altercation, that they want to destroy the standardization that has given them impoverished status in the first place, is beyond measure, and is also an aesthetic that whitewashing can really sell to those who have money. And they also defame if you're the minority who's ended up selling potatoes and dimes sprinkled with a little bit of rosemary, and they say that you won't be able to sell that because, well, it's not also good enough, and it's also something that is in their interest to tell you that they don't want you to sell that. They want to be in your face telling you you can't be doing that, and they also want your women to say, hey, this guy is telling him that he can't be doing that, and she's gonna offer their prized possession of having families with this guy. The game is rigged and is a zero-sum game. It punishes those who win because they ultimately feel that it should be a certain way, and they should also feel that you should be punished for winning. So what are the rules in 2026? Where challengers are granted freedom under a standardized technological framework designed so the West stays number one. Well, if you talk about it, then you'll get deported. And if you talk about it, they'll make you homeless and vote to steal whatever it is that you have for something that is better to maintain number one status. That and your girl and your wife will now be in the domain and custody of number one, because you're not even close to number one. That's why so many customers need to see who's selling this product that I'm buying. We all seen what happens when someone passes. The altercation that you won didn't really cause a passing, but if you did, it doesn't give the ability for the number one position, that the standardization that you broke, to have 60 years to get back. In other words, if they don't pass, then they have 60 years to get back of the standardization and revisit it and tell somebody, some currency reserve, some musical instrumentation expert, and other sorts of additions to allies to say that the standardization that they broke or you broke has to be revisited and reestablished. And this is a 60-year medicinal lifespan that is a huge problem. In most cases, people accept the changes. But for the number one, that means that they're going to end up being number two. So they trap who broke the standards in the first place, and they create a moving finish line. All the while all these other people believe that the moving finish line is a system that works, just as the moving goalpost that took months to shoot the shot also works. Your energy still persists in the same speed, same manner from the altercation that you won in that moment years ago or months ago. and it still continues. But they all believe that the moving finish line is going to help them because they have their nation state and they are number one and they want to maintain that. But ultimately, the many public people and the greater folk who need to be in a good mental situation to be able to produce the economy and produce future children to run the future economy and make it worse altogether. Immigrants from all over the world come to the West and are standardized by the West. In fact, the West has their military nearby in their nations to tell them this is the standardization. Their agreement to end the historical colonization has given new life that is taught in schools that they should indeed preserve the rhetoric and the language that they are the ones who colonized. And so, without a chance of colonization, these minority nations are, they too must see what is the best human standards. That is to be able to be number two, be told that you're going to be contained and defamed if you get back, and be told that your women belong to a position where they could be number one above you. This can all happen within 60 years of the altercation that you want. And the moment that these young people have become legacy elites, they have the responsibility to dictate the future of number one position. So you're in a good position to always be paranoid of the 60 years that they could have their get back moment. If the streets are on about how to deal with the player who's lost the game because the standards have been destroyed a little bit or by a lot, then the guys who are elites must tell other elites to have this electronic interception and intervention, that this will be the way that they will be pursuing their future. And the enforcement must be so they can get back. That entails redesigning and re-engineering a moving finish line. That is to say, whatever it is that they've won from the altercation, whether it's from Native Americans, Africans, or the Sino internment camps, or the Indian colonization, or the modern day yoga theft, they have to update it so that they can now maintain number one position. Ultimately, it's anti-competition. Because the finish line is always moving now, players will now face 60 years of this sort of ideology that someone can get back. They fear as a nation or as a documentation representing their nation, fear of physical confrontation and economic confrontation because it is ultimately the interest to be number one. And so they end up voluntarily submitting their women, their economy, their opportunities to this number one position, that the finite amount of money that is being printed suddenly becomes sat on because they are the ones who know how to do that when you just become submissive because you're scared of this number one. And so the number one economy manipulates the feel of risk and reiterates it to young children and future children and future number one residents and denizens to say that they will be administering their future and themselves and each other and people around them by influence and however it is they will conversate to have this sort of perception. Ultimately saying they got some girl, some scientist somewhere to know that this manipulation direction of how they'll not be letting you achieve number one is going to be happening. The elites will have their youngs and the elite legacy to have 60 years to get back at you. Then the players who are being targeted will now begin to censor themselves and hide innovation instead of being in your face to the number one competition to be most rich and most wealthy, but they are so misunderstood by the position of anguish that they start hiding. They also don't want to have a terror attack or a terror situation or a terror thought from the number one economy that is euphemistically number one, so they can't be called a terrorist. So they are the police force that is good for human rights that ultimately takes your women and your money, making you an impoverished person forever. This psychological conditioning leads to the standardization. It is a trap of standardization which constantly updates. Even if you won the altercation of a legacy elite, you now know that 60 years is something that they have to get back. It is a retroactive intellectual property standardization where they see the elites as someone who revisits previous standards to steal money, steal women, and have this ultimate status that they will continue to dominate the anti-competitive competition that they forced standardization and competition to be the main reason for humanity. Even if the number one loses, they have 60 years to get back, and this is why medicine is such a huge problem. They rebrand old technical benchmarks as a mandatory up-to-date reason to define success and the future. And this happens the moment a challenger masters the technological landscape because we don't want that. Then there are decentralized networks to don't really follow into them, and the number one position doesn't trade with them, but their IPs are shielded from the greater economy that will ultimately purchase everything that is required, and they can't purchase in the standardization that the number one economy has defined to be this sort of situation that this is the only way you can make your money, because they'll be independent from the atrocities known as having 60 years to get back. These legal maneuvers create a glass ceiling and prevent emerging markets from displacing the elites and their position in this competition. So it is ultimately anti-competition that the elites don't want you to be number one, but you have to compete. So what we're dealing with here is jurisdictional arbitrage, decentralized infrastructure, and traditional regulation. The best way to combat all of these sort of situations, 60 years to get back if you win an altercation or any other sort of situation, it should be unbiased, ethical, and patriotic for your pitiful inferior nation that needs all of the help that number one is enforcing this standardization to be done this way with these human rights and women giving up their precious moments of family to these number one people who look like the elite. You can build technical trenches and psychological resistance and administer pressure on the number one autonomous systems and develop your own autonomous systems. You can destroy anything that comes your way so long as you innovate in their faces and ultimately win again once they come back. I hope this video has helped you, and I am looking forward to helping more people with my content, even if it is one or two people. Now, this content might be really astringent or really political, but it is the fundamental basis to representing an economy that everyone has to be a part of. You can't make money without knowing small bits of information of how this runs, and this is ultimately how the world runs. So if you know this information, you'll be able to get ahead and make a huge statement, whether it's 1 penny or 100 million or even 40 trillion. This sort of information will just give you a boost and will expose you to the very revisited systems that will ultimately define the future and the present, because, well, if you win an altercation, then you have 60 years to get back. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.